Yo, what is happening, guys? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back, and today, let's go over some of this crazy Switch Firmware 6.0 data mining. So I'd actually been on a break from making videos for a couple of days, some of you guys might have noticed, and I did want to get to some discussions today. There was quite a few things to talk about that I didn't have a chance to really touch on, some news over the past couple of days. Some of it I found interesting, some of it not so much, but really the only topic that super jumped out at me that I felt like I actually had something to discuss and that I found interesting was this whole situation about the Nintendo Switch firmware 6.0.0 getting apparently prepared to be updated for the Nintendo Switch this coming week. Lots of discussions how that is supposed to tie into and affect the launch of the paid online service. Lots of interesting thing happens, of course, as usually tends to happen. Some people have been able to sort of hack the Switch, so to speak, and actually data mine some of what seems to be coming along with this update, and it's kind of giving us an idea of what we might be able to expect if what we're being told is even actually true. Now, that's kind of the tricky thing when it comes to this situation, and this is kind of usually the case with a situation like this, which has happened before, and maybe it's just like the cynical old man in me, but when I hear this news and I see what everyone's been discussing and what the data miners had apparently revealed, and some of the photos that they've leaked out, which I do have and we'll take a look at as well, I definitely can't help but wonder, I mean, is this even true? How many instances, whether it's fake Nintendo NX controllers, fake Rayman leaks in Super Smash Bros., and of course, most recently for the Switch, the fake firmware update from sometime last year that apparently had all these different profiles and I think was going to have voice chat and all this crazy stuff that was confirmed to be fake. The dude who even made it turned out to be some kid who like exposed himself saying, hey, I was the guy who made that fake video that convinced everyone, Nintendo, do you want to give me a job? And it's like, oh my god, dude, everyone just stop doing that crap. And so anyway, the point is, while there isn't as much evidence to this being fake with this situation as usual, it is kind of good to just keep this stuff in mind when we start to look at all these controller icons and new profile icons and save data stuff we're going to talk about. It's like, is this even real, or did people just make these mock images of what the update looks like and just put them on the internet for people to just react to? And to be fair, I'm really just playing into it by making this video discussing it, but a lot of people have been discussing it. I've watched several videos from friends of mine and other fellow bigger YouTubers, people I don't even know. Everyone's been talking about it on Twitter. It is interesting. There is reason to believe a lot of it for sure. And so, what the hell, man? You know me, I like to talk about this stuff, so let's just get into it. Now, a little bit of a spoiler for later in this video, the real meat of this conversation and the thing I'm actually interested in talking about has to do with these controller icons and what that could actually mean and how it might even factor into something like the virtual console. I know that might be a dirty word to say right now, but I'm going to use it anyway, and we're going to get into that as kind of the meat of the video, but I'll touch on some of these other things first that, again, a lot of other people have talked about. I'm going to be like the millionth video you've seen. I'm several days late to the party here, but like I said, it's interesting and I want to talk about it. So, with the update of 6.0.0 coming, we also know Nintendo's online service launches sometime later this month. I mean, it's September 1st, the day that I'm recording this, and Nintendo has been telling us for weeks now that the second half of the month, as in 2 weeks from now, is about when we should expect Nintendo's paid online service to launch. The fact that it is still a mystery, the actual launch date and the actual final details of everything it's going to do, the fact that it's still a mystery as of September 1st, the month it launches, is insane, and it's definitely pretty frustrating. As I said in my last video about the online just like a week or so ago, I'm not really sweating the fine details and super losing sleep over the online situation. I'm really not. It's like, it is what it is. I've got $20 a year to spend. I don't really care about a lot of that stuff that we have or don't have or whatever. But like I said, that doesn't mean it's not really weird that Nintendo's keeping so much of it a secret and still not letting us know the date. It's like, why? Nintendo, like, what are you holding off on? There's no way that on September 1st, you don't know what date this month you're going to launch the service. So just tell us when it's coming. Anyway, that is what it is. It's Nintendo being Nintendo, and we just kind of have to deal with it. So with this update, we all kind of feel like the general consensus online is that this is meant to prepare the Switch for the online paid service going live. When that actually launches, the Switch and its whole infrastructure and the UI and the OS needs to be updated to handle what's going to be coming. And so that's where we see some of these photos here that, again, the data miners have put out. Pretty basic, pretty simple. You see the system information and it just says firmware 6.0.0, nothing fancy. Could easily be photoshopped, but could also easily be real. It all makes sense. And then the big thing, there's two other big things before we get to the controller icons that a lot of people have talked about, and we've got pictures to support these as well. The first is the Save Data Cloud Backup. That's something that's listed in the options menu here with the system information, and you can see that right here. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, this is probably what we could assume it would look like once that feature is available, and anyone who's paying for the service then has access to use the Save Data Cloud Backup. It would clearly have to be some sort of option in the system menu, like where you would go to manage your data, as seen in this picture. Right below that is the ability to manage it in the cloud. So while we don't 100% know if this is how the layout will look in order to access the Save Data Backup, this is what we're seeing with these screenshots. I mean, I wouldn't be half surprised if you have to first go into the data management option before then selecting data on your Switch, data on your SD card, or data on the cloud. So that's why it's like, okay, this could be fake, or it could be real. Maybe Nintendo wanted to make it separate from the data management option. I mean, you don't really know. It's interesting to see, and I mean, I guess there's really not much more to say about this. You know, we all know that with the paid service launches the ability to then save to the cloud if you want. A bit controversial because a lot of folks, correctly I would say, are upset about the fact that the save data stuff, or the cloud save data, I should say, is behind the paywall of the online service. While I don't really care about it one way or another, I do understand that making it a requirement to pay for the service to access the cloud is kind of silly and ridiculous. I have to imagine that the only reason that's being included behind the paywall is simply because there isn't a lot to include behind the paywall. It doesn't seem like they're giving us a lot right out of the gate. And so probably like the more things and features they can hide behind the $20 paywall, the more it justifies the pay. So that's kind of my thinking on why Nintendo would be doing this. Now, another thing that people have noticed, and again, there are pictures online to support this as well. This to me really doesn't mean much of anything. But apparently, again, this could easily be photoshopped. Although I tend to believe this, it could be very easily photoshopped. But what we've seen and are hearing are randomly Captain Toad icons added to your online profile picture, where you can use your Mii, or you can use one of like whatever 50 different Nintendo character icon options that they provide to you with the Switch. And with previous firmware updates, new icons have been added from other series and characters, and apparently Captain Toad seems to be the one that Nintendo wants to focus on. I guess that's interesting. I don't really care. I mean, I just use my Mii, and, you know, the only ones I would ever use that aren't a Mii is something Metroid related anyway. So if you care about what icons you use, apparently Captain Toad stuff is coming. I think it's a weird choice only to have Captain Toad and not have myriad other better options, which is what tells me one of two things. A, this is fake and photoshopped, and there are some artifacts on the picture that makes me think it might be photoshopped, but either A, it's fake and it's photoshopped, or B, if it's real, it could mean that there are even more characters to come beyond Captain Toad, but with this first step to the firmware update, that maybe Captain Toad are just the first ones made available. So I don't really know. It doesn't really affect me. Maybe you guys care, but that's that. And so now let's move on to kind of the more serious, substantial stuff that I want to talk about. There are two main details to discuss in this part. The first thing is, although there's no pictures of this, at least that I've seen, apparently a slogan for the online service has been made visible somehow through, like, accessing some of the internal data of the Switch through the firmware update. And the slogan, and I know we've all heard it, but the slogan is more games, more features, more fun. And some people think that that's kind of weird or silly or doesn't make sense and they're making fun of it or whatever, and like, I mean, that's fine if you want to make fun of it, don't get me wrong. But as far as to think it's weird, I actually don't think it's weird. I think it makes total sense. And, you know, maybe the service is not really going to justify the slogan. That's kind of what some people are talking about. Like, how many features and how much fun are you really giving us, Nintendo? Like, that's not what you're selling to us for $20. And I get that. But as far as the slogan existing, Nintendo creating a slogan to justify its first ever paid online service, that makes sense. And the reason it would be located somewhere inside the internal data of the Switch, to me that makes sense as well, because I would assume that somewhere when you're kind of navigating through the online network or the service or the eShop or maybe the new layout or whatever might change, you might see that printed somewhere like on the top of your screen when you're like in the online menu or something. So, you know, what I'm saying is it's probably seen inside of the data for the Switch because it's going to be visible on different screens that you go to, because Nintendo will probably plaster that slogan into the Switch. Wherever you're going when you're online on the eShop or paying your bill or whatever you're going to do, you're probably just going to see that slogan. So I don't know. Some people think it's weird. To me, it doesn't seem weird. If this is a real slogan that Nintendo's using, and it sounds very Nintendo, by the way, then I would fully expect to see it on my Switch. So it's not strange to me. But then we start to think about what the slogan means. More games, more features, more fun. If you don't look at it in a silly way and kind of just crack jokes about it and actually try to dissect why they would even create that slogan, that brings us to the final thing I want to talk about. And it's this Nintendo controller icons that people have apparently discovered. You can see an image here of apparently what exists. I only have seen this image through watching Spawnwave's video. He made a great video discussing it. He obviously grasps the tech aspects of a lot of this stuff much better than I do. You guys know I'm not really savvy to that stuff. But he featured this image. I haven't seen it anywhere else, so credit to Spawnwave for having this and finding it. And there's a whole string of all the different controller options, the Pro Controller, all the different Joy-Cons, and whatever else. I don't even remember, like GameCube controller probably for Smash, stuff like that. And included in that are these couple that we see here, what look like NES and Super Nintendo controllers, even a controller that looks kind of like the Wii's classic controller, which is definitely kind of strange. And so this has a lot of people talking, and I definitely find this to be the most interesting. First, another reminder about this. Obviously, so clearly could be fake and photoshopped. Anyone could make these, man. The templates for these little controller icon images that Nintendo has used on the back of their game boxes for like 3 generations in a row. Anyone with like minor Photoshop skills could create these images and make NES and Super Nintendo controllers. Like, there's no doubt. So I'm not telling you guys like, oh my God, this is real. What does it mean that they exist? I am firmly expecting these to be, just as much possibly proven to be fake as they could be proven to be real. So they might be fake. Anyway, let's move on from the fake aspect. Let's talk about if they're real. What would it mean that we're seeing these? There has been a lot of speculation and a lot of discussion about this. And personally, I think it's not impossible to think that these are real, and it's not impossible to think that it doesn't mean that something in the form of either a virtual console or other retro games coming to the Switch. I mean, if you stop and think about it for even like 1 second, it makes so much sense. It makes perfect sense. I mean, I wouldn't even question it for a second, to tell you guys the truth. There's another aspect to consider. We already know that we're getting those 20 NES games coming with the paid online service in some fashion. That is one of the few confirmed things. So part of the reason these are showing up might simply be because NES games at least are going to be made available. But then again, there are Super Nintendo controller icons. There's what, again, seems like a Wii classic controller icon. So what does that all mean? What could this be saying? Like I said, to me it means retro and or virtual console is probably going to be coming to the Switch. If these images are real, that's what I would tend to assume. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why would you have different controllers? Like, you can't use any controllers for the Switch other than the Joy-Cons, a Pro Controller, or the Joy-Cons like in the grip, and then eventually there's going to be a converter to use the GameCube controller for Smash Brothers. And so that stuff's all great and fine and dandy, but that's not how any of these other controllers works. And that's not even including the fact that you could have original NES and Super NES and Wii controllers, and they have their own plugs that you can't plug into the Nintendo Switch in any way. And then that's also the same for the NES and Super NES Classic. Those controllers use the same plugs that the original Wii remote and nunchuck used to use. And those also don't have a way to plug into the Switch in any way, and there's no like dongle or weird device that they've made to allow you to do so the way you would with the Wii. And so why would they include these? Some people have thought, and I do understand this line of thinking, that, oh, they're going to find a way to make them plug into the Switch. Like, okay, they're going to have an adapter for the USBs on the dock or something. Okay, maybe they would do that. Maybe they will just create a dongle that you plug in, and then it makes them wirelessly connect to the Switch. Okay, yeah, I guess that could happen. However, I don't see Nintendo doing that. I actually see, and some people may love this, some people may hate it. Personally, I see a possible future where if there's any truth to this, and retro and virtual consoles come in and these icons are real, I personally see Nintendo seeing a great opportunity to make a whole brand new line of actual wireless classic Nintendo controllers that are meant to sync up with the Switch the same way the Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller do. Just imagine, you guys, and I haven't even made up my mind on if I like this or not, just so you guys know, because it would kind of be Nintendo just milking more money out of us. But when we look at it from a business decision, imagine if Nintendo was creating and selling for like $40. Let's say for $39.99. You could buy a brand new fancy wireless, Nintendo Switch compatible wireless NES or a Super NES or a Wii or a Nintendo 64 controller that just wirelessly connects to the Switch but is actually in the same shape of the normal controllers, just like how Nintendo recreated perfectly the NES and Super NES controllers. And if they were going to do a Nintendo 64 classic, wouldn't they have to create those controllers? So why wouldn't they do the same thing and create wireless versions for the Switch? And again, they could probably sell those from anywhere from like $30 to $50 a piece, and they would make a killing. Even if you think like I do, it would be Nintendo milking us big time. They would sell like crazy. You guys all know, so many of you, maybe even myself, would run out and want to buy those things because Nintendo could say, hey, and this could even be for down the road, you guys. I mean, let's not forget these controller icons, a virtual console, retro games sold individually on the eShop like I've been theorizing. That might be something that's meant to come sometime next year, but the infrastructure for it is just built into this first update with Firmware 6.0 this month. So we have to remember that. I'm not talking about seeing this stuff announced this month, September 2018. This could be for down the road. But just imagine if Nintendo's like, hey, the virtual console's coming, and to celebrate, you can play your favorite classic NES, Super Nintendo, GameCube, 64, whatever. You can play those games with the actual controllers that were originally made for those games with our new line of wireless Switch classic controllers. Like, dude, oh my god. Nintendo would just freaking make so much money, man, because people eat that stuff up. Sometimes I eat that stuff up as well, man. I'm totally guilty of it. So anyway, whether it's a virtual console or whether it's meant to be individual NES, Super NES, 64 games sold on the eShop, like I've been saying, I think that this whole thing, we're talking about these controller icons, we're talking about the slogan of more games, more features, of both of those ideas factor into what I'm talking about here. We factor in that stuff, and then we factor in these controllers. I just think that maybe that's kind of what this stuff might say. It all hinges on whether or not these dumb controller icons are photoshopped and fake, or if they're actually real. And you know me, I'm 50-50. I'm not committing to them being real, and I'm not committing to them being fake. I just don't know how to predict it other than to say we'll just have to wait and see. But in considering a situation where these are real, I can't help but be excited about what it might be telling us. Like, I honestly struggle to even see any other reason, if these are real, I struggle to see any other reason these would be included. Where would these controller icons come from in a world where they're real if Nintendo isn't meant to give us controllers that could actually work for the darn Switch? And right now, you can't use the original classic controllers, and you can't use the mini versions, the SNES and NES versions of these controllers on the Switch. You can't use any of them with the console, and I see wireless dongles being really cumbersome and awkward, and people would be upset. So just make brand new wireless controllers for $40, Nintendo. Everyone will buy them, everyone will love them, and everyone will have great ways to play classic games if Nintendo is still planning on bringing those to the Switch. So, whew, man, I feel like I had a lot to say. I kind of went on like a little ranty tangent about this, but honestly, maybe I even sounded kind of like angry, but I'm actually not. I actually think that this is all very interesting. Like I said, you guys know I'm not really tech savvy, and I don't understand the idea of data mining and breaking down the internal code of a console's operating system and all that stuff. I don't get it. So I'm just lucky that other people are smart enough to data mine, put the stuff out on the internet, give us the screenshots. Many other YouTubers and people online are much smarter with the stuff that I am. They're able to talk about it and dissect it, which gives me great talking points to go off of and discuss my own personal angle and perspective on what's going on. And for me, a lot of the stuff in the beginning I discussed, I don't really care about. It's not interesting, and it doesn't really faze me either way. I don't really care about the cloud save stuff for now. But these icons, and a situation where these icons are real and not photoshopped, it just gets me excited at the possibility, man. Like, I'm not trying to make the claim, oh my god, the virtual console is definitely coming, everyone get excited. I ain't crazy, man. I'm not going to tell you guys that. But it is something to think about, right? I mean, why else would these controller icons exist if they're real? What would Nintendo be doing with them? It's got to be something something kind of like what I said, I guess. So anyway, at this point, I'm still just kind of rambling because I find it all very fascinating. And honestly, I want retro games to come to the darn Switch. I want to play Super Metroid and Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time and old NES games and Genesis games. I want to play this stuff. GameCube for sure. I want them portably on my Switch. So I just get excited about thinking about the possibilities. So anywho, hey, I gotta wrap this up. I'm gonna shut up about this topic. Very interesting stuff, man. The firmware 6.0, the data leak, the data mining. Is it real? Is it fake? Is some of it real? Is some of it not real? I mean, I don't know. We're going to find out this month whenever Nintendo finally launches the darned paid online service and this firmware officially goes through and we all kind of understand exactly what it's changed about the Switch at that time. So what do you guys think? I know you've heard of many other people discuss this stuff and now you're only finally getting to my video several days later. But what do you think, man? Do you believe a lot of what we've seen? Do you not? What do you think about my ideas and theories and the kind of weird virtual console conversation I had on this video? I want to know what you guys think and if you believe in it or if you don't. So that's it for me today. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.